Crisis Core Reunion is a direct port of a 2007 classic from the Sony PSP, a prequel to one of the greatest games of all time, and that's Square Enix's magnum opus, Final Fantasy VII, which in itself was released in 1998. It's crazy to think it was released almost 25 years ago, focusing on Zack Fair, the man who made Cloud the soldier he is and the legendary protagonist of Final Fantasy VII. So we are going to be changing the format of the reviews on the channel. I'm going to be going into conclusions, thoughts and scores first, and then we're going to break down the components of the game and how I came to that conclusion. Reunion tells the story almost verbatim with some badly re-recorded lines. The gameplay is lifted entirely from 2007 and honestly it really shows its age. Lacking any quality writing itself, Reunion relies solely on fan service and the legendary source material it is based on. It's really hard to get those bits wrong because just based on purely osmosis, the game elevates due to the source material that it's borrowing from. Now there will be many times you crack a rice smile, not due to really Crisis Core or its writing or its gameplay in itself, mostly due to the sentimentality you feel towards the world you're in, and that is that world of Final Fantasy VII, Midgar, the characters you see, Sephiroth, Cloud, Zack. However, Crisis Core does very little of the work itself, instead relying completely on your feelings towards Final Fantasy VII and its world. And to be honest, those feelings are going to be very strong because it's one of the greatest games of all time. A mission structure that quite frankly is showing its very old age, and a final chapter that was a bit of a slogfest. Sadly, Crisis Core was probably better left in our memories on the PSP. It does pull at the heartstrings at times, and again, that's where a lot of these comments about fan service are coming out, because that is where it's at its best, when it has a little nod to, let's say, the bar in Midgar, or a shop in a certain area of Final Fantasy VII, or, you know, when you first see characters, or you understand their grievances towards certain characters in the main game, you know, that's where it's at its best. But where I really feel Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core has let itself down is in not establishing the emotional connection between Cloud and Zack in a way that moves me deeply, which it really should, because it's such a huge part of Cloud's story, and for me, I should have felt something, well, basically, I just should have felt more. I felt at the end, and for me it just all fell a bit flat, and that is the biggest critique I have of Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core. But anyway, I'm feeling a decent to strong 6 for Crisis Core, and I'm going to break down why in the review, so let's get into it. So visually, it's really hard to tell the difference between Crisis Core and Remake, to be honest. It's running at 60 frames per second, 4K, it looks absolutely fantastic, especially in combat, until you get to the cutscenes where there is some comical animations. It feels like they basically remade a chunk of the game and just thought, you know what, forget about the animations, we'll just use the animations from 2007 and put the game at 35 quid. Yeah, look, I didn't mind the animations. The game has a lot of charm to it in that way. I grew up on those animations, and therefore, you know, I really didn't bother me in the slightest. But yeah, it's jarring at times, in all honesty. The dialogue has been rewritten a bit, but god, the story in this game is just all over the shop. I mean, I had to stop and Google things a lot of the time to figure out what was going on, and you know what, even then it barely made any sense. Zack is a completely lovable character. He really resonated with me, and I feel he'll resonate with a lot of players.
失敗するぞ。セフィロスは命令拒否だそうだ。そんなのあり？甘やかしすぎじゃないの？本人に言ってみるか？やめて。
There is something very, very endearing about Zack and the game's story. When you put it together, it just kind of works and it gets away with it. Look, as I said, the writing's bad, but there is a charm. Whether or not you find this game charming is so subjective. It's really, like, you know, if you don't find this game charming at all, you can definitely knock a few marks off this score, because I found it charming, and I still feel I had a lot of issues with the game elsewhere. But yeah, story's a bit odd, Zack's amazing, seeing characters from the Final Fantasy VII world is fantastic, it looks glorious, the game world, you know, looks lovely Midgar, as it did in Final Fantasy VII Remake. Now, where Crisis Core is really brilliant is when you're spending time with some of those legendary characters from the Final Fantasy VII original story. Sephiroth is obviously the standout here, but then you've got characters like Zack, obviously the main character, but then his heroes and the people he looks up to in terms of Angeal, who, you know, it's nice that we see Zack's kind of hero as well, and I like that. Now, even though the writing may be bad, Crisis Core does ultimately add a layer of depth, and it does flesh out one of the most amazing video game stories of all time, and for that you have to compliment it. And if you are looking for fan service, if you are looking for that extra bit of information, if we are looking for that little bit of backstory, a bit of a deeper level of understanding of some of the characters in Final Fantasy VII, Crisis Core does provide that. The music, as always in Final Fantasy VII, is amazing. I mean, how can you not get goosebumps listening to some of this music in combat?
Activating combat mode.
All of the sound effects, the voice acting. I played actually with the Japanese voice actors. I could not stand the English dub, I've got to be honest. I thought it was awful. You may disagree. It was just not for me. I turned it off after 5 minutes, in all honesty. The Japanese voice actors were fantastic, in my opinion. Now, as I said in my concluding remarks, for me, the biggest issue is it not sticking the landing on that emotional connection with Zack and Cloud. Now, especially when they spend so much time together towards the back end of the game. So much more could have been done, and I really feel like it's a missed opportunity by Square Enix, especially with so many more chapters of the remake coming out. They could have just put in a bit of extra work on that story, on establishing the emotions that Cloud feels for Zack and the driving force behind Cloud and the Final Fantasy VII game. And I really feel that was a misstep by Square Enix, in all honesty. But saying all that though, the moments spent with characters such as Aerith, Sephiroth, even just talking to NPCs who kind of talk about things that, you know, only develop later on in the Final Fantasy VII story. Even seeing Shinra at its peak was really cool. Being inside the Shinra building or looking at Shinra from the workers' point of view, all of that, it is super cool. It works really well, and I really enjoyed it. But in terms of its core structure, you know, the story isn't great. The characters not brilliantly written. It's amazing to see Sephiroth kind of as part of a Shinra soldier and then develop into kind of the monster he is. I love the little flashbacks in combat as well. The DMW system, which I'm going to talk about in a second, kind of has these flashbacks with characters who then go on to become main characters or big characters in the Final Fantasy VII universe. But it's kind of just about his memories with them and little moments that they've shared together. I know I said I didn't like the way Square Enix dealt with the kind of bond between Cloud and Zack, but I did like the ending. The kind of final closing scenes of the game I thought were quite beautifully done. But yeah, talking of kind of the combat and everything, the DMW system, I didn't mind the DMW system at all. The issue Crisis Core has is that unlike Final Fantasy VII, when you're playing with different characters, especially in the remake, because the combat system is taken basically directly from remake, but when you've got one character, it's all very one tone. And there's a big mistake they made in the combat in that they allow you to have equipment sets, so you can kind of have different setups, but you can't switch between those setups in fight. Now the issue you have here is that you don't really know what enemies you're going to come up against. So sometimes you'll just have the, you know, wrong elements. Okay, it's not game breaking or anything, but I mean, it just would have been nice to switch between sets, because what that would allow for is a bit more variety in the combat. With you only having one character, and due to the DMW system, which I'm going to explain just in a second, you have unlimited AP and MP a lot of the time, and as a result, it's a very spammy fight. The DMW is basically like a roulette wheel. It kind of spins, and if you get 3 matching images, you get a really powerful ability. If you don't get 3 matching images, you get like a smaller bonus, such as extra health, extra armor, increased magic points, or, you know, spells don't cost any magic points. AP is not used at all, which results in you know, a bit of RNG to the fights, but it also means every fight's just a little bit different, which I like. But it's just not different enough, and that's because you're controlling one character and doing kind of the same, let's say, I don't know, 10 moves for 12 to 13 hours. Now you can add a lot more materia and moves to Zack's kit, which you can then slot into his equipment sets, but that does require you to go and do a lot of missions. Now, if the mission structure is weird, I like the fact that they're so short, but they are so basic. You can see the background footage now. You literally plop into a mission, you port it in. It's practically a straight line. You just walk straight, enemy right at the end, you kill him, boom, done, next mission. And though you're not forced to do these missions, the leveling curve in the game kind of means you do have to do some. And there's some really good items hidden behind these missions, but also a lot of XP behind these missions, and you can go into certain fights extremely underleveled, or you can get certain materia from missions that completely change how a fight plays out. And yeah, it was kind of like a double-edged sword, if you pardon the pun, with these missions and the mission structure. It was okay, but honestly, it was very dated. It just felt, all of it just felt very dated. Just on the missions, actually, Some of the main story missions are honestly truly awful. There's a sniper mission towards the end that's just so random, and it's the controls on it are so bad. There's stealth missions that are terrible. They kind of have these like little missions chucked in the middle to kind of change the kind of tone of the game, because it is very spammy and button mashy. But honestly, some of them, they feel like they're from 2007. Hell, they feel like they're from 997 AD. But overall, I mean, Crisis Core, it is at its core a very repetitive game. There's a lot of repetition, it's a lot of similarity, and it does get a touch boring, dare I say, towards the end. The summons are, as always, amazing. They've actually got new animations for the summons, and they're all awesome, as are the kind of DMW supers that you get with emotional triggers from certain characters. They're all excellent. I enjoyed them all. The combat is, despite being samey, it feels good. I never played the original. Everybody says it's a massive improvement on the original, but yeah, to me, I never played the original, so I'm just judging it for what it is, and that is quite repetitive, if nice to look at. But yeah, as I said in the conclusion, overall, this game relies on sentimentality. It relies on your love of Final Fantasy VII and its universe. It relies on your love of Cloud and his supporting cast, and it really needs you to turn a blind eye to a lot of things to really enjoy it. But when I review games, I don't want to give games a pass based on price, you know, or just based on my emotional feelings towards the game. Final Fantasy VII is honestly one of my first true, like, incredible gaming memories, and as a result, I want to love Crisis Core, but it is really creaking at the edges here. It's an impressive remaster. You know, the combat is, as in Remake, flashy and fun to look at. The materia system is actually cool. The summons are excellent. The soundtrack is, as always in FF, just amazing. The performance is excellent, but honestly, the dialogue's dreadful, the writing's dreadful, the story's dreadful, the environments are repeated often. The combat, due to having one character, is very, very similar, very one-tone. The voice acting on the English dub was awful. It's a decent game. It's a decent fan service game with a lot of flaws, and that's why I came to my conclusion of 6. Anyway, that's my review of Crisis Core. Let me know what you thought of it in the comments. Did you feel that emotional connection between Cloud and Zack? Did you feel like it was a worthy remaster or remake or whatever you want to call it? Or did you just find it old? Let me know. Thanks for watching. Take care. Peace. Subscribe. I'll catch you later.